And I'm sure a few more people will trickle in as we start with these introductions, but I'm excited to use the time that we have, so I'm eager to kick it off. First of all, thank you everyone for attending. It means so much on behalf of myself and the Legal Innovation Student Association at Suffolk Law School. It means a ton for everyone to be here and participate in this conversation. My name is Chris Emmerich. I'm a Legal Innovation Fellow here at Suffolk in one of our clinics. I've been working with legal technology for the past couple of years, and it's really just my pleasure to introduce three of our distinguished panelists today. I will introduce them briefly. First, I will just give a couple technical considerations before we start, and reminders. Of course, feel free to have your cameras on at your discretion. However, I will ask that the participants remain muted during the remainder of this panel discussion. We will, of course, post any questions, comments in the chat. We will get to them in stride. Otherwise, it might just be best that we push it to the end, and we'll incorporate those questions into our Q&A at the end. So I think, and I've said this now a couple times, just to reiterate, I think we'll take the next 5 or 10 minutes introducing our panelists. I'll give a brief introduction of the topic as well, and then we'll just kind of kick it off into our discussion. Hopefully we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. If people have to leave, that's more than appropriate. Post any chat or question in the chat, and we'll get to it towards the end. And as you know, today's topic is a discussion in 21st century legal technology, which I think is such an interesting topic given the climate that we're in. I'm always reminded of one of my favorite Richard Susskind speeches. Maybe 6 or 8 years ago, he gave a speech at HLS where he was talking about in the 90s how he was almost blackballed from speaking at events because he was the lone person in the room saying technology is going to change the legal environment and everything is going to change. And of course, the technology he was talking about was email. And now here we are today with AI and LLMs and really just so many different ways the legal field from being a law student to being a lawyer is changing. And I say that for the sole point of technology isn't going anywhere. We use technology now, whether it's Westlaw or Lexis, and we will use technology at a firm, whether it's Clio or any number of tools. And it's just a great transition to then mention, I'll start with Miriam. Miriam is the founder of Lawformer, which is a contract automation tool. It's designed to help draft and standardize contract clauses and terms. She received her LLM in Innovation, Technology, and Law from the University of Edinburgh. Next, I'll introduce Marie Widmer. Marie is founder and CEO of Amplify Ops, program management software designed for legal operations specialists. And she received her JD from Golden Gate University College of Law. Finally, I'll introduce Kajal Raju. Kajal Raju is a Suffolk alum. She works for Hello Prenup as a legal content developer, providing assistance in prenup drafting. And special shout out to Kajal for being an alumnus. And like I've said, my name is Chris Emmerich. For those of you that I haven't met, I work within the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic here at Suffolk University. I work with an Indigenous tribe, helping to build out some of their court systems using a program called DocAssemble. And so without further ado, I will hand it over to our panelists. Maybe first we'll start with Miriam and then Marie, and then we will finish with Kajal for just a brief introduction.
Of course. Thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and thanks everyone who's joining us today for this very interesting discussion. I'd like to start off with, saying thank you to Suffolk Law School and as well as LITSA for, creating and organizing this webinar, and also for the work that they are doing promoting legal tech education among law students, which I think is very important and I'm very passionate about, and I know that we'll talk about it more as we progress into the webinar. As Chris said, my name is Miriam Chadonelli. I'm a co-founder of a legal tech startup called Lawformer, which basically helps legal professionals draft high quality legal documents faster and more efficiently. And we also help law students and entry-level legal professionals to develop practical skills in contract drafting, which we think is such an important and highly demanded skill in the industry. I also happen to be one of the ambassadors of a global community called Legal Ops Uncensored, which was founded by Marie, but she'll talk more about that. And it's a global community that promotes legal tech and legal operations across the world through, organizing events and providing resources for free for anyone interested. And as Chris mentioned, my background is in law. I did my undergrad in law, and then I tried various roles from, legal compliance to working in-house to doing legal research, reporting, policy, etc. And I realized early on that I didn't want to do a conventional career in law. And then I decided to do my master's degree in innovation tech and law at the University of Edinburgh. And then I discovered I was really passionate about technology and innovation and all things combined. And so that really sparked my interest in wanting to create something tangible that I could bring to the market. And that's how I ended up in legal tech. And I've been loving the journey so far, and I can't wait to hear from other panelists and also share my insights into those of you who also might be interested in pursuing a similar career, or just knowing more about legal tech and how you can leverage it in various roles that you will be taking on. So very excited about this discussion, and looking forward to hearing all the questions that the panelists might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess, Christopher, I guess I'll hop in. I'm so thrilled to be here today. This is one of a few law school groups that I've gotten to meet, and it's just so exciting to see people talking about legal tech in the educational space, and as they start to look at options in their career. I came from a super non-traditional background. I flunked out of engineering school in undergrad, and then I decided that the next step to go from there was to get my paralegal certificate, in hopes that I would never have to talk about math or technology again. And then somehow, from being a paralegal, I started at law firms in Georgia, where it was like a 65-year-old attorney sitting there with like 3-foot tall stacks of files next to his desk, and I was having to scan all of them and put them in a case management system. And that somehow tricked me into realizing that tech was really easy and it was kind of fun, and that scanning and automating things was actually really cool. And I started on this kind of 10-year journey from these small firms in Georgia to working as a contract manager to working at big tech. So I've worked at Pinterest and LinkedIn and in Web3 at Dapper Labs and at HubSpot. And I just realized that I loved tech, and I loved automation, and I loved efficiency more than I ever could have expected. So that's where I am today. I'm never would have imagined that I would be building an AI product for lawyers, but here we are. And I think that that's kind of the magic of a lot of us. Anyone who's going to the legal profession, by nature of being here, you're already incredibly talented, and you're already on an incredible journey. So I hope that we get to be a small part of it by encouraging you to kind of be your authentic self and figure out where you fit in this ecosystem, and know that you can kind of fall over and start back up again, and whatever works for you. So I'm thrilled to talk to everyone today. Yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Skadra, as Chris mentioned, and I am a recent alum from Suffolk, so it's nice to be back. Currently, I am a legal writer and researcher with Hello Prenup. During my time at Suffolk, my first, interaction with legal tech was with Suffolk's Lit Lab. So I got to do a project with them one summer, and then I got to spend a year with them in their Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic. I also did an internship with LaDroid, which is similar to ChatGPT in the way it functions. And I also got to do an internship with the European Court of Human Rights, where I did some legal research and also helped them kind of start developing an inter-court communication system. So that's all been really exciting. And I'm excited to be here and definitely hear from Marie and Miriam as well.
Well, thank you to all of you for coming once again. Special thank you to the Legal Innovation and Technology Student Association, Diane O'Leary, who couldn't be here today, Dean of the Law School, Andrew Perlman, and others for all helping put this on today. I guess with that being said, we'll just jump into some of the questions. And I kind of want to start going back maybe to, and any panelist, feel free to jump in. I have a couple questions specific to some people, but of course, anyone can jump in at any time. And my first question is really, what was that first experience using legal technology for you? You were in law school, maybe even before that. What was that experience like? And how did that kind of lay the foundation or give you an inkling that maybe this would be something worthwhile?
Yeah, I can start off. I think I just mentioned I started off maybe the first summer after my 1L year, and it was with the Lit Lab. And at first I was like, this is challenging, it's exhausting, I don't know. I definitely shed a lot of tears because I was definitely learning DocuSample. But I think taking that experience and be able to adapt and like learn this new legal tech platform that the school had and be able to use it in a way that would help courts and individuals in a way that I didn't really, I guess, see technology playing a role in the legal field was really exciting. I came in wanting to do human rights, and I remember being like, I don't see how legal tech can contribute. And I was wrong. I think it's a great tool to start seeing how it can help a lot of different communities, especially low income communities, maybe people who don't have the best relationship with the legal field. So it's really nice to see that aspect and like using that like first summer with legal tech and really seeing like the broader picture, taking a step back and see how it can help not people in the legal field, but people who need to use the legal field for me.
Yeah, I could go next. Won't be naming any names, but I was working in-house when I first used a document management platform software. And I remember using it. I was quite excited about using it because that's usually my natural reaction. I want to use things and I want to try things out myself and then make decisions based on my personal experiences rather than what someone has told me about this or that tool. But I remember using it and my first feeling was that this product or tool was not built with a customer at its core. I felt like there wasn't a lot of customer feedback that went into developing this tool because it wasn't intuitive, and in some ways it sort of required working backwards, almost like working against an existing workflow that we had in the company and that I knew that a lot of companies had. So the question I had in my head at that time was, why wouldn't they try to make things easier and simplify the workflow that we currently have rather than making up a new one that will take so much time and energy from not just like older, more elderly lawyers, but also like younger ones to get used to. And so I feel like I always had that at the back of my head. And when I started working on my product, that's one thing I wanted to make sure that I knew who I was building this product for. And I started talking to these people early on to make sure I didn't make the same mistake. So in some ways, it was a good and a bad experience that helped me do things differently when I was in that position at some point later on.
I will jump in. I think it still resonates for me now, but my earliest realization of why tech mattered so much in legal is it kind of bridges the gap between the lawyer and the customer. So I was at a personal injury firm, right, as I mentioned, and most people that are coming are at the result of a car accident or some other life event, and it's traumatic. They're stressed. It costs a lot of money, a lot of time for them. And when you have a phone that automatically identifies their name and it ties to the case file, and you can immediately pull up the details, about the last conversation, you can provide a seamless experience that makes it seem like you're always attentive to their needs. You can pick up the phone, and as far as they're concerned, they're top of mind to you. And you can't really provide that experience if they're a stack of paperwork sitting on your floor. And you have to go spend 5 minutes pulling the file and reading through your last, post-it note from your call with them. And that's still the principle I carried through when I was working in-house at big tech, right? So my customer was no longer, a normal person that was in a car accident. It was someone who was working on a procurement or a finance team who wanted to, build some efficiency internally with the legal team, but it still rings true, right? You're really building so that the skills that legal teams aren't already built in with in terms of customer service and user experience. I really believe that technology helps solve that for them.
Just a quick comment to what Marie was talking about this, bridging this gap between like lawyer and customer. I often feel like there's this one-sided conversation of like legal tech being for lawyers or for legal teams or for being law firms, but it's not true, and we need to change that narrative, because legal tech should be for customers, for individuals, for people who want to access legal services at a more affordable rate and at faster, more efficiently, etc. If you want to access a birth certificate or driver's license or a marriage certificate, etc., we need legal tech every step of the way, and we need this done correctly. That is why it's so important to talk to these people who are, sort of like indirect beneficiaries of some of the benefits that legal tech can offer. So I agree with what Marie was talking about.
That access to justice point, I just continually hits for me. I keep coming back to it as I discover more legal technologies and more of its impact. The ability for technology to impact a pro se litigant is just incredible. And it's those processes that I think should receive a lot of attention as well. Miriam, you also brought up feedback, which if anyone who's worked in legal technology knows how important feedback is. I want to come back to that later, but I think maybe this would be a good time to discuss a little more about Lawformer and legal. Marie, I'm sorry. Talk about Amplify.
Oh, legal. Oh, yeah.
And Kajal, of course,
Sure.
throw Hello Prenup in there as well. I'd love to hear about that. Hello Prenup. Kajal also mentioned the Lit Lab. Our law school has a special think tank, if you will, that works a ton on access to justice oriented legal technologies. So that was just in reference to what Kajal was talking about earlier.
Should I go first, or would anyone else like to do it?
Take it away.
All right. I'm really glad you brought this question up, Chris, because it's something that no one should overlook. I think user feedback is not important. It's almost everything. If you want to make sure that you build a product that your customers want to use, you need to integrate their feedback as early as possible. And I think one of the most common mistakes a lot of legal tech founders make, especially first-time founders, and I feel like in many ways I also made this mistake, is waiting for a concept, an idea, or MVP, or a fully fledged product before you want to share it with anyone else for feedback. There are so many feelings associated with it. You don't want to do it because you don't want to be associated with product that's not good enough or an idea that's not good enough. So you feel like you have to do initial research and make things perfect before it's ready to go out there and to see to have other exposure and to sort of like have other people have a look at it. It's the biggest mistake you can be making, because user feedback can entirely change the direction of what you're building and how you're building it, and in a good way, because if you build something and then you show it to your customers, it's almost unlikely that it will be something that they want to use. For us, it also actually happened quite organic. We decided to build small and to make sure to launch our product only after we had enough user feedback. So we launched Lawformer clause library a year ago, and we onboarded a number of customers, and then we started talking to them almost every day, not just to them, but with other customers as well. So their feedback, the we gathered over the course of the year, is exactly why we're building this next product that we're building, and I'll elaborate on that further down the line in the conversation. But I would say, start talking to your customers as early as possible. There's never too early. Even if you have a basic idea, you need to go out there and talk to people who could say something about it. And this is a conversation I had with Marie last week. So it's funny that we're discussing it again, but I believe in that really firmly, and I would encourage anyone to do it.
I love that. Yeah, Miriam gave me that advice, and I'm incorporating it. I'm earlier in my life cycle of my company than Miriam, and it's invaluable advice. And I would say, even if you have no interest in legal tech, or if you go into a different area of legal practice, that advice applies to everything. Iteration is key, like being willing to share a document that you don't believe is perfect or a piece of work product and accept feedback and accept criticism and understand that perfect doesn't necessarily have to relate to your career in law. You can be willing to put something out that's imperfect and grow as it grows. To introduce my product, I've been implementing legal tech for, I guess, 10 years now, if you're counting my time in practice with case management software. And my experience has accumulated to the point where I've just felt like technology in the space is continuing to develop, but the way that we implement it and the adoption of project management skills on legal teams has not improved at the same rate. So I'm passionate about building a way to kind of help legal teams on ramp, project management skills without necessarily spending money on hiring additional members of their team or building consultants. So our tool is going to walk teams through the whole process. So from building their project charter, identifying what tasks need to be completed, recommending a certain timeline, recommending a certain budget, kind of reading the data and identifying blockers, teaching them how to, kind of manage change management, things like that. It's something that I didn't learn in legal practice, and it was a harsh wake-up call for me when I got in-house and had to be a data analyst and a lawyer and a project management expert and 15 other things at the same time. And I felt so under-equipped. So, but yeah, I second that advice that you can be a million things during your legal career, and it's okay to be imperfect. And if you weren't imperfect, there wouldn't be any excitement because there wouldn't be any room to grow, right?
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I worked at a company this past summer, like a legal technology consultancy, and it seemed every week we were having these product feedback. We would go through guided interviews, and it was a really great lens into how important that feedback is. As law students, we experience feedback maybe a little more critically from professors. Clients do not tend to be less critical. They have certain expectations, and we act as these translators. So just thoughts that I had as you all were speaking. So I want to talk a little bit. Just a question that came into my mind as you all were speaking is how do you take an idea, a legal technology idea, a gap you see in the system, and how do you turn it from an idea to a business or an opportunity or something that could have larger impact? I know this isn't a startup conversation, of course, but important questions.
It's a difficult question, and also I would say there's no one way of doing this. It works different for different companies, different startups, depending on what you're trying to build, for what sector you're building it, or what for practice area in law you're building it for, what market, geographical area, etc. For me, it was like I was doing my master's degree, and I always knew that I wanted to build something tangible, but I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, and I also didn't feel like I had enough understanding of the market to be able to fill a gap in some way. So when I was doing my master's degree, I was doing a class on AI and robotics, where every other week we had sort of like a task to come up with an idea of a legal tech product that would solve this or that problem. And that really got me into thinking, like, what could I be doing? What would be this idea for this week? And not only it got me into the mindset of like always like thinking about solutions for various legal tech problems, various legal problems that I had also experienced in my career before, but it also served as a very good initial market research. So I was looking into different solutions that already existed in the market, and I'm like, okay, this company is doing this well, but what's missing? What's lacking? And then I would start reading articles and feedback and go on LinkedIn to see what some people were writing about. Where were they struggling? Was it like document management, or was it contract building? I would also read articles about how were the industry standards changing? Where were the skills shortages, etc. So I guess it was a combination of everything, but that's what got us to the idea. And then again, the way we manage to build a product is by talking to as many people as possible. And when you talk to people and put yourself out there, it can be really scary because you're exposed. But at the same time, it drives people towards you. And then you may attract people who would want to, help you build the product, who might not be able to provide monetary support, but might be able to offer their technical expertise because they found your idea exciting. And then, people want to sponsor you to go out to a conference and talk about your product or an idea you are building, and that already gives you a lot of exposure. So trying different things, trying as many things as possible, but the best way to approach it is to make sure that as many people know about your idea as possible. And I know that people involved in startups are very protective of their ideas because they feel like someone will copy their idea, so they don't want to let people know what they're trying to build before they have the product. But it's not the way to approach it. Idea is not important, how you do it is important, and who you do it with. So if someone wants to take your idea and do it, then you can do it better. If you can't do it better, you were not meant to do it in the first place, and you can then do something that you can do better than the previous thing. So don't be scared of people knowing about your idea, because it can bring you more good than bad. So yeah, be open about it and talk to people to hear their thoughts as much as you can.
Should I go? So my story was a little bit similar, but a little bit different than Miriam's. I was kind of the user. I am the user story of my software. And I personally felt like I'd hit a wall with my career where I felt like I was, what do they say? The definition of insanity is repeating the same mistake over and over again and hoping for a different result. So that's kind of how I felt being in-house doing implementations and just seeing the same horror stories happening over and over again with tech implementations and just wanting things to be different. And then just kind of sitting there one day in my living room and going, you know what, I could actually do something about it instead of whining about it. So, but actually building the startup, I will tell you, like, I've spent the last year and a half building my network on LinkedIn. So gone to conferences, I've been commenting on people's posts, I've been heavily involved in LinkedIn. So I grew, I think in a year and a half, I grew my LinkedIn from 300 to 4,000. And that network has been invaluable. And it's not like I did anything special. I just commented on people's posts. I spent time each week giving targeted connect requests, sending people messages. And I invested that time before I never knew I wanted to start a company. I never knew I wanted to do anything except being a full-time employee, but I still invested in my brand because I wanted to build my confidence and I wanted to make sure that I had, people to talk to. And that has been invaluable. Like people like Miriam, for example, I've gotten so much free support and advice throughout the last couple months with Amplify, from, founders who raised $100 million giving me detailed red lines on my pitch deck, to people connecting me to investors, to people connecting me to developers. I really feel like I can't even take credit for a lot of it because I'm just telling you, like, the generosity that people have in this industry, you just have to connect to them and you have to ask, and you have to just be confident in yourself enough to ask. And the information is out there. People are willing to help. You just have to love yourself enough to go ask for it. So it's all there. And Google too. If anything that being a lawyer has taught me, it's just how to be good at Googling stuff. So yeah, everything you need is on Google.
That should be a book
Just a
title.
very quick comment on what Marie said. I think that initial, introducing yourself to people and reaching out can be quite scary on social media. I'm not someone who feels comfortable with these things, but they've been tremendously valuable to me because the reason why we're having this conversation right now, I've met all of you on social media, on LinkedIn, or through various like social interactions. I didn't know any of you in person. We didn't study together. We didn't work together. So if you only limit yourself with the people you work with or people you meet physically, then you're massively, underselling yourself and your potential and things that can happen to you. So I would say it's hard, but make sure that maybe every day you send one message or like one connection request to someone whose work you find interesting, and not in a fake way. Just engage with these people and be curious about the work they're doing, and you might find opportunities within their work that you might not have heard of before, you might not have imagined. And that has happened to me over and over again over the last couple of years. And I couldn't do it without, overcoming my insecurities early on. So it's hard, but you can do it too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something I hear a lot of even just in this brief conversation is this idea of collaboration. Do you guys see opportunities to collaborate with other legal technology companies, or what might be that commonality that someone like Kajal, who works in a legal tech company that deals with prenuptial agreements, or someone who deals in more like in a different area of legal technology? Do you see that complementing?
Yeah, I think collaboration is key, and all of us are going through similar experiences. All of us are having to find technical resourcing. All of us are having to do fundraising. All of us are having to find what our customers are really looking for. And all of us are having to combat different difficulties with working as legal as a customer. And I think that doesn't matter what industry you're in, you should be talking to everyone, as many people as you can who are kind of working in parallel to you, and take learnings from what they're doing. Because if you think about it, like we all maybe have our niche, but as a whole, we do represent a larger community, and we have an obligation to help each other.
Yeah, I've spoken with a lot of people who I knew would never be the customers of the product I'm building, but they've referred me to someone they knew who could potentially use my product. And that is an important thing, and I'm very appreciative of it. Collaboration is very important, not only because different legal tech products can work together. For example, my database that we've built can be useful for some of the CLM platforms or document builders or document intelligence platforms to enrich the work that they're doing. So that could be like direct collaboration between two legal tech products, but also for visibility, because in the legal industry, it's quite traditional and conservative in many ways still. So everything still happens with word of mouth. The traditional marketing, digital marketing doesn't work as well as in other industries. So visibility, partnership, and gaining visibility by association and getting credibility on the market is extremely important, and you should not underestimate the value that partnerships and collaborations can bring to your product. So especially for early stage startups, I think it's crucial to make sure that you work with other companies that already have a name in the industry, and you help each other tap into different markets and different segments.
And I just want to touch one more time on this idea of law school. Kajal, you specifically were in a clinic at a law school, and I'm curious if you think there's a way institutions like that could nurture or encourage some sort of legal innovation edge, or if they could do it in a more productive way. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Suffolk does a great job. Having the LIT lab, the Legal Innovation Technology Lab, and now they've started a new clinic this year. But before that, they were collaborating with previous clinics, having LIT fellows. And so I think just finding different ways to include as many students as possible, especially as they're just starting, like their law school journey. My first summer there, I had an opportunity to work with the LIT lab and work with mass courts and like building out some of their like court forms so they can have them online during the pandemic. So I think being in spaces that are innovative and working and collaborating, I mean, Marie and Mary mentioned it, like collaboration thing is very important. So Suffolk collaborating with mass courts, collaborating with the clinics at school. And then, beyond that, I think, if you have an idea, take it to a company. If you want an internship somewhere and you're like, oh, I want to incorporate legal tech, I have seen that a lot of companies who don't already have people in that space, if you're coming straight out of law school and you have the experience and you have the classes and knowledge, it's exciting to go out and like pitch it to a company and see if they're interested in. Maybe they won't be necessarily, but then maybe that means they'll, okay, well, maybe we can't start with you, but maybe we can, start a partnership with the school one day, or like your lit lab. And so I think being open to the opportunities and seeing what's out there, also doing the concentration at Suffolk or doing design challenges, which Chris and Zara have done. So just being open to like all the different aspects of legal tech that is out there, whether it's a conference somewhere else or it's something that the school is hosting.
Yeah, any other thoughts, Marie or Miriam, on how like your academic institutions could have fostered a more nurturing or encouraged legal technology concentration more?
I feel like I have a lot of thoughts about this. I probably could talk about this for days, and I know Marie and I have talked about this continuously. And I think the legal profession is changing. There's no question about it. The more we adopt legal tech, it's going to look different. And if you look at the most recent research, it's at least in the UK, you will see that 71% of law firms that work with large corporate clients already use legal tech in one form or another. And you can also see that the paralegals that had legal tech skills were paid 20% higher than those that didn't. And also 56% of lawyers and solicitors in the UK, they agree with the statement that legal tech skills and being familiar with like non-legal specialists such as like data science and project management and design thinking is extremely important to succeed in the industry. That is for me a clear sign that law schools shouldn't underestimate legal tech. And not just legal tech, just practical skills that the industry requires. I remember on my undergrad, I had a course titled Contracts. And within that contract subject, I didn't have a single day when we drafted a contract ourselves. So I came away with it, never having worked on a single contract. And then I had to go do an internship and learn how to do contracts there. And I was like, what was the point of this whole course? Yes, it did give me some theoretical knowledge and principles of working on contracts, but unless you do it yourself, you're never going to fully understand how it works. And what I think is really important is that law schools continue this conversation with their graduates and ask them, what were the most important skills that you utilized when you started your career in a law firm or in-house or a legal tech company, etc.? And what were the skills that you wish you had? Where were the practical skills that you felt like you were missing? And also engage with law firms proactively and ask them, what are some of the skills that you're looking at when you're recruiting new people for law firms or in-house teams, etc.? So it is not a difficult thing to do. It just requires some effort and reassessing things. And I feel like a lot of the law schools are really bad at it because in some ways they feel like the curricula they've built or the sort of like legacy they've built with their product is somehow under attack if they do so, but they need to be more agile in doing so. And I feel like the University of Edinburgh, for example, my university has been quite good at doing this because they are launching a new course about legal tech and how to use legal tech in practice. So, and I know that your guys doing amazing work as well. And I wish there were more associations within law firms or law firms themselves that feel like they need to keep up with this game because it's going really fast.
Yeah, I'd love to see more conversation happening with all law schools, kind of just signaling to people that no matter whether you go to a big firm or you try to go in-house, you're going to be forced to work with technology. And it's not something the schools are preparing you for. I remember I built a legal tech course for Golden Gate, and it ended up we didn't get enough enrollment. But the reality, like Miriam said, is I was working as a contracts manager while I was in law school, and I was having to use a contracts lifecycle management software and build templates and build playbooks and work through Slack and work through email and use Asana. And law school does not prepare you for any of that. So it's you get your JD and you leave, and then you have to go learn another whole new skill set. I had to learn how to design PowerPoints that didn't have a white background and Times New Roman font, right? I had to learn, I had to learn things in a very, I had to become a creative. I had to be a data analyst. I had to be a project manager. I had to be a technical implementation expert. And that was even before I got my first legal ops job title. So I think the more we try to raise awareness to law students of what they're walking into, that, if you get hired in an in-house role, your title may say, junior associate corporate counsel, but the reality is the minute you start on the pay clock, You're going to be expected to have 15 different jobs, and law school didn't prepare you for some of those. And it's not scary or anything. It's just that these are things you could have easily learned in school had you known to prepare for it. And I will say most of the legal tech vendors would love to talk to you and give you a demo, because if they have the opportunity to listen to you and have you as a potential future customer, if you reached out to them individually, they'd gladly give you a free demo. And if your law school reached out to them, they'd gladly come in and give your class a demo. So, the more you advocate for yourself and the more awareness there is, I think we'll all be better off.
And without stating the obvious here, I'm going to ask a question, but we've in the last 20-ish minutes, we've talked a lot about ways that legal technologies can help early associates and lawyers really in any capacity, law students. What is the aversion? What do companies feel will not go well if they implement legal technologies? Why wouldn't every law firm just incorporate tons of different legal technologies and really make everyone's life easier?
Interesting question, Chris. I think there are various factors. Obviously, they're concerned with someone else having access to confidential information, sensitive data that's associated with their client. So they want to make sure that you have stringent security and privacy measures in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Also, they have really long adoption cycles, so they have to vet everything carefully and go through the proper due diligence process to make sure that they onboard you as their vendor. And it's not just about adoption. If they only worry about adoption, they're making a mistake there to begin with, because it doesn't stop at adoption. They have to make sure that they also provide important skills training for their people for them to be able to leverage these technologies properly, because we've seen a lot of failed technology adoptions, and you basically waste a lot of money by paying a lot of money for a product that your staff, your people don't really use. And when I talk about skills training, it's not only about explaining to people how to push buttons and how to use it on the technical level, but also for you to show them the true value of using these legal tech products, because people will not innovate or do something differently unless they're incentivized to do so. So you have to really create a culture within a company where you encourage people to try different things, to be more efficient, to be more innovative, especially in the culture and in the industry where the business model is as it is. Like within the economics of the legal industry, you are still paid for your time. And so what's the incentive for people to do things more efficiently, right? There is growing incentives because the industry is becoming more competitive. There will be other companies doing things better than you are if you don't innovate, but you have to explain and make sure that every single person on your team understands this. And this starts from, company management, and then it has to be ingrained within every single individual, but it will take time.
I have a spicy opinion about this. So kind of mirroring what Miriam said and then spinning off of it as well is I've been confronted a lot in my time in law with the billable hour mindset. So, the standard way that lawyers make money is to bill 0.6 minutes, 0.6 hours for their time. And I will say, even though that's a technical financial practice, it is so ingrained in the lawyer mentality. And what I mean when I say that is that lawyers are taught from law school onwards that the value you present is from the time you put in, not necessarily the work product that you put out. So it's not work smarter, not harder, it's work harder, and be smarter, kind of. And that followed that original mindset, which came from the billable hour, which is that you might work 12 hours a day, but you can only bill, that might result in 4 to 6 actual billable hours for the client. That's followed into tech, right? Because tech breeds efficiencies. What we're saying is that the work you could have done in 8 hours, we could automate down to 2 hours. That's horrifying to a lawyer, because if they've had to pull 80-hour weeks just to meet their bare minimum, and now you're telling them that half of it's going to be automated away, to them, you're telling them that they're going to get fired. So it is hard because well, while some of us who are in the project management or the in-house space and have the luxury of having 9 to 5 days and salaries, for the people who are on billable hours or coming from a billable hour mindset, there it does create a lot of fear, right? Because efficiency doesn't necessarily mean a good thing, and it doesn't necessarily equate to value. So you've got to kind of create that psychological safety for lawyers first, where you let them know that, like, if we automate part of your job, you're still going to have a job. And if we automate part of your job, you're still going to get paid. So there's a lot of there's a cultural shift that's happening at the same time. And unfortunately, the technology has come out before the culture has changed. So now we're kind of having to run both of those in parallel at the same time. So that's what I would say is there's a lot that has to happen for it to work perfectly.
Yeah, I think now I'm hinting ever closer to these ethical concerns that we have. We talked about privacy and security and making sure that people are represented fairly. What are some of these ethical concerns, if you all will humor me and maybe put some names to it? And how do legal technologists make sure that these products that they're putting out, even though they use really robust LLMs, or how do they make sure that the products don't have these implicit biases, or they don't contribute to that type of environment?
This is a very good question. I'll try to cover a small aspect to it because I feel like Kajal probably has stronger feelings about ethical aspects of legal technology given the area she's working on. But I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was saying when I was studying law, I was specializing in data protection and privacy, and I did work in cross-border data compliance for quite some time. And at that point, I have a very strong stance. I thought it was quite easy, encouraging all the companies to have robust data protection measures and to always have customer at its core and to implement privacy by design and etc. But now I'm building my own product, and now I'm that company who has to do it for their clients, and it is not easy because you have to make sure that you balance building a good product with using data, especially client information, in an ethical way. And how do you achieve that? I think the only way to achieve that is being transparent early on about what kind of data processing practices you have within company and whether people are okay with that or not. Because without transparency, you won't get far. You have to talk to your clients about what you're trying to build and how you will be using their confidential, or not confidential, but information that that will support building that product, that will provide the right intelligence, data, and metrics that will enable you to build that product. And if they're not okay with that, then you shouldn't use their data. And but to zoom out a little bit, I think it's also extremely important that when you're building a product, have your client at the center of your decision making. And also use the data minimization principle, which says, only use as much data as strictly required. I feel like companies have the tendency to collect excessive information just in case, which they never use. It contributes towards data silos. Then you might have, cybersecurity breach. You might lose this information, etc. But make sure that you are very considerate in the process and only make decisions that could be detrimental to someone only as long as you've thought this through. But yeah, I'll have Marie and Kajal contribute with their thoughts too.
Kajal, in terms of the work you did with Native American tribes, what kind of ethical considerations were there in using technology?
Yeah, I think Mira made a good point. Just knowing what your client wants. I think oftentimes in the legal field, as new lawyers in the legal field, we think maybe we know what's best. But I think it's really important to know that clients know what they want. And I think so, specifically working with indigenous tribes, I had to come in, take note of like cultural differences and maybe language differences, educational differences. So something that maybe I thought was simple language, I had to go back and get feedback and simplify it even more. So I think being open to feedback and not waiting till the end, being, consistently getting feedback from your clients, and getting their input. Because like everyone already said, ultimately they're the ones using the product and you want to make sure that they can use it. It would be unfortunate if you spend all this time making a product at the end and then they're like, oh, we actually don't even really understand what half of this means. So I think like with that, part of like legal tech is just making sure we use like simplified language. We know the legal terms, but the people using these tools don't necessarily always know. So, making court forms for tribes to use, especially when it's their first time, is just taking into account everything that, what matters to them, the language we use, whether you use like indigenous or native, or whether, how you explain what a contract means, what it means to have like, a legal document notarized, and kind of laying out the process for them, I think is also really important. And some things are intuitive, but some things you won't know until you like have those deeper conversations with client, show them the product, get their feedback.
Yeah. Sometimes these ethical questions are big and hard to answer for a number of reasons. I'm lucky enough to be working on a project Kajal was working on with this tribe currently, and something we were talking about is who's going to host the server for them when they have this project developed. Who's going to be the person in charge of managing that data? Going back to what Miriam was talking about, the importance of making sure that data is secure. Is crucial to all types of businesses. So those are really important considerations.
And I would also echo what Kajal said about explaining in simple terms what these legal tech products do and what they stand for, because demystification of tech is important, not just for legal tech, but for tech in general, because this is really what fosters trust and understanding between the end user and technology, and this is extremely important. But I also wanted to address one of the questions that was in the chat, and I know that Marie, you provided really thorough answers to these questions, so thank you, Marie. But I just wanted to add something quickly to where you get started on your legal tech journey and what kind of roles that you apply for. Just a very general advice I would have is just do some research around what legal tech products are available out there and find something that you're really passionate about. And do not wait for this company to put up a job advert necessarily. You can reach out to them and tell them, I'm really interested in what you're building. Could I work with you for some time and like learn from you and explore what it's like to build a legal tech product? I've had 2 interns approach me like this, and now they work for Lawformer. So I feel like this is the way to do it. If you wait for the right moment, by the time someone puts out the job posting, that you might already be too late. So be proactive, engage with these people. Most of these companies are very open to having young students working with them, because they need a helping hand. And also you need first-hand experience knowing what these how these products work. And for me, always the best way to learn is by doing. So, you can get started today on the research on what kind of legal tech products you're interested in and where to work for. And obviously, I'd be happy to provide more guidance on this. If you could let me know what is specifically that you're passionate about, I could point you to some of the companies that could be, interested in working with you. So that would be, my encouragement for all of you. And to answer the other question about whether you need to necessarily start in practice to then move into legal tech, I don't think so. And in fact, I know lots of people who don't have any legal background that are working in legal operations and various legal tech related roles, and they are absolutely fantastic. So I feel like some of the requirements that some companies set for jobs that don't really require legal education is not necessary. And yeah, I don't think people should be discouraged. And one of the biggest the nicest things about legal tech is how it is democratizing legal practice and the industry in general. Now we have like roles such as like legal innovation lead and legal project manager and legal operations people, etc., like roles that didn't exist before and only exist now because of legal tech. So I would say that's my favorite thing about legal technology so far.
Yeah, and thank you, of course, Marie, for answering these questions in the chat. That's hugely helpful. Leave it to law students to be already asking about the jobs, which I love. And I do want to look ahead a little bit too. I want to make note of where we've seen some trends, starting with my anecdote of Richard Susskind with emails in the 1990s being this really innovative thing. To think during COVID, courts were only accepting email is really just a wild transformation. And so I want to look ahead. Where is legal technology going? What are some systems, softwares that are progressing us forward? What do you foresee as being kind of groundbreaking types of technology?
I guess I'll jump in. I'm going to answer with a heavy bias towards the in-house corporate sector because that's where I've been most recently. I think legal teams, whether they're in-house or in firms, sit on a ton of valuable data. So they take in, if you think about it, a legal team in a corporate environment, they're in charge of corporate registration, a lot of HR complaints. They sit on every contract that comes through the company. They sit on the policies from compliance to privacy to so on. Just so much data that dictates how the company runs, whether it's losing money, gaining money. And they just haven't been leveraging it because it's all been taken in and stored through manual means. So that's why you've seen the rise of contract lifecycle management companies. There's like 200 of them now. It's absurd. And just getting a handle, we're still at an early stage where teams just need help. They need to start to get to understand, like, how do they standardize contracts? How do they understand the data, the value of the data that each contract represents? And how do they track that? How do they store it? How do they utilize that in PowerPoints presented onwards? So that's like a key one in corporate. The other one is billing, right? So teams, I'm sure firms experience this as well, but legal teams in-house have a tight budget and they have to do the most with it. So identifying what are you spending on your vendors, whether it's law firms or software or consultants, being able to track that, especially with the billable hour. We have a lot of e-billing softwares that have been built specifically to read law firm invoices. And like I talked about those 6.6 increments, there's AI-based e-billing softwares that now can track every single line item on a law firm invoice, and it can actually flag which ones are non-compensable, which ones are, excessive billing, which ones are non-compliant billing. So there's a lot of technology coming out that's actually helping in-house teams kind of regulate and control spend that's coming from their outside counsel. There's privacy software like OneTrust. There's new software coming out in the third-party risk management space, in the ESG space. In the compliance space, there's tools being built to deal with KYC, AML. So every kind of large scale compliance and regulatory thing you can think of, there's going to be tech built for them. Gartner's predicted that I think 50% of teams are going to be invested in compliance software in the next couple of years. Legal tech spend is going to increase 3 times between now and 2025. So definitely heavy investment in legal tech. The other one that I can't stress enough is that before all of that, one of the biggest ones that teams are investing in right now is the legal front door, is what they call it, which is just basically ticketing. And for all of you have probably seen that engineering and IT teams have always used ticketing. It's been standard for them, right? They know that they get a ton of requests. It's just now occurring to legal teams that, hey, maybe all those emails actually are tickets. And it would be really cool if we could track those tickets and know actually whether we responded to the email, how long it took. So now legal teams have discovered this magical thing called ticketing, and we call it the legal front door. So that's a big one. We're now using Jira and Happy Fox and other things to track our tickets. And it's so that's another one. So those are the ones top of mind for me right now.
I have tons of other topics, and I know we're already almost an hour into this conversation. Something that's extremely high on my list is just mentioning diversity in these conversations of legal technology. We're lucky enough to have a female-led panel, and it's just really exciting to have these opinions and thoughts out there. What do you all think are really important aspects of diversity that you see maybe lacking in legal technology, or that legal technology is being innovative towards?
Earlier I mentioned one of my favorite things about legal tech, that it's helping the legal industry be more democratic and open. And in many ways, It's also removing the exclusivity from legal education, because legal education used to be something that only, relatively wealthy people could afford. And then that education would determine your future and your ability to even be in the legal industry. And I feel like we're not there yet, but I feel like it's changing. Marie and I both mentioned that there are so many roles now in the legal sector that doesn't require legal education. And you can be doing legal operations or legal project management or legal innovation without necessarily having had to gone to the law school, which I think is extremely important. I think it's allowing people that are brilliant and intelligent and have very innovative approach to processes that could help within legal tech be in legal tech, while whereas 10, 20 years ago it'd probably be impossible. The only way to get into the industry would be through an expensive law degree. And we're also seeing more diversity for people, underprivileged backgrounds, more diversity in terms of like having more women at, management positions and high level positions, which is all positive trends. Obviously, there are some disadvantages that legal tech can bring, but we have to make sure that we're aware of this and we mitigate them. But overall, I think it has been really positive as far as diversity and inclusion in the legal industry goes. And yeah, I'm sure people might have different opinions, but this is what I've observed from my personal experience, at least.
There's a lot of layers to this conversation. I think one of them is for the first time, we're now seeing legal teams hiring. I refuse to call them non-lawyers, but we're hiring a lot of diverse talent on legal teams because of tech. People who are coming from, backgrounds in engineering or IT or project management now have a space on legal teams where they didn't before. And it's just starting to become more accepted that there are areas of legal practice that don't necessarily require practicing law. If you want to be a fully fledged legal team, you're going to have a diverse kind of range of members. The other one that I think is going to grow in the future is consumer tech for legal, right? I don't think we have enough of it right now. A lot of the tech has been geared towards in-house and corporate, obviously, because that's where the VC funding has been going wild. There is a healthy justice tech sector. So companies like Justice Bid and other tools are coming out that are helping people with diversity data actually in law, and kind of shining a light on the horrible lack of diversity in legal, and kind of helping people move the needle, as well as consumer facing tech. So things like helping people with a chat bot to deal with employment law issues. And I know some people who are working on immigration related tools as well. And I just think and the tools, even like Lawformer, right? Like just getting training and access to people, like getting people in a tool that can help them learning new skills and up level themselves without having to fight kind of that glass ceiling, or be lucky enough to get a call with senior lawyers or people that see them as worthwhile to that attention. I think tech is definitely helping break down the barrier. But definitely we need more consumer tech, because the more that the people who are just living their daily lives can access legal services or compliance related services or tax services or regulatory services without having to pay $1,000 or sit in an office with an attorney and read legalese or things like that. The more we can kind of remove the barriers and not gatekeep legal knowledge from the general public, the more we can be a diverse community.
Yeah, I agree with what was said. I think the more diverse a team is, the better for everyone. I think it's really important for companies to really think about their team. And I'm not saying you have to go and make the most diverse team, but I think thinking about, having people of color, people from different backgrounds, educational backgrounds, like Maureen was saying, having people with disabilities, having people with other languages, like maybe English is their second language, because I think having people in those roles really help a company be able to better cater their tools to a more diverse consumer base. I think also it helps to create tools that people want to use, because it's, like I was saying, working with a tribe, what I thought was simplified language, to them, they're like, oh, can we actually take it a step further? So, I think, and that I was lucky enough to be able to, work with the client and like get that feedback, but having someone on a team who could maybe say that, to say, oh, well, I think maybe what if we restructure this tool this way or this page this way, I think is really valuable to have. So I think the more diversity, the better. And I think that can look different in a lot of ways.
And I do love the idea of construing diversity as broad as possible. I was just having a conversation with a professor. We were talking about plain language in like ordinance drafting, and she had posted this one type of ordinance and then the plain language edit after, and it was gray text on white background. And I said, Professor, there's so many important considerations with plain language. People who are visually impaired need something more than a white background and gray text. So just another consideration there as well. I want to open this up to a Q&A in our last 10-ish minutes here. If anyone in the chat has something that they were sitting on, if anyone wanted to go over their question and just kind of have it enumerated a little further, I was reading over some of these questions and they're fantastic. So thank you. Keep them coming, please.
I actually wanted to add to a point that Miriam made earlier. I got my role from like networking, my job now. So it wasn't, it was taking that extra initiative to like network and reach out to people. And because of like the networking I did while I was in school, which you can also do the same thing when you're out of school, whether it's like through LinkedIn posts, meeting with professors, you know, and I would always say, oh, like I'm on the job hunt now. I'm interested in legal tech, being in a legal tech space, whatever, how that looks for me. And because of that, someone recommended me for a job, got an interview, and then that's how I have a job now. So I think it is really valuable to, just go to networking events, come to events like this, go to conferences, talk to people, message someone on LinkedIn. And I think it can go really far as long as you can also it's more than just sending the LinkedIn request. It's, taking an extra step to be like, hey, we did this. Can we meet for coffee? I'm interested in this XYZ. So I think that's really valuable.
Yes, and I remember something that Marie said in one of the webinars that we organized a few months ago, which is do not talk about yourself all the time. Just talk about the value that you can create for them, because that is really what people want to hear in this conversation. So look into their work that they are doing. Identify some of the areas that you might think they would appreciate help with, and then offer your help and be genuine about it. And trust me, they will reciprocate. You shouldn't expect them to do it the next day, and you shouldn't do it with the expectation that they will. But I think showing people your value is the best way to engage in a conversation, rather than talking about yourself and what you're capable of. So just be genuine and helpful.
And I just threw a link in the chat as well. Oh, I'm so sorry, Marie. You take it away.
No, I was just going to piggyback and say the final quality that I look for when I'm hiring, and I know most people in legal ops and tech mirror this, is just curiosity. It's not a skill you're born with, it can be learned. But it's just curiosity. Curious people are more resilient, right? So you can come to the table with all the skills and the right law degree and everything like that. But if you're not resilient, like if you're not curious about the work you're doing, and you're not looking for what's next, like what could be fun, then it's just not going to be as that comes across as someone who can handle multiple projects and tackle new challenges, because you're going to enjoy it and you're going to look for it. So just kind of practice curiosity in your personal and professional life, instead of necessarily maybe checking boxes on a resume. Kind of think about what interests you and follow your gut and your intuition, because we will be able to tell when you're interviewing with us, and it will read on your profile whether you're a curious person or not, and whether you're seeking kind of personal fulfillment, and following work that excites you. And people want to work with people who are on that journey, because we know that directly benefits us, right? Selfishly. So.
I love that perspective. Yeah, I really do love that. I was just going to add that I, in the chat, posted one of my favorite resources that I come back to maybe a month or so ago, two of the top business schools. and the United States came together and published this resource for students, maybe for professors as well. I consider it to be a really good reframing of how we can utilize LLMs and AI technology in our education. A lot of professors really see this as a huge disruptive force in education. And I think just going through this, they list four different uses for technology as a feedback generator, team coach, learner, personal tutor. I think it's just a really good framing of how technology can impact so many ways of education, not just directly write this brief for me, write this motion for me, as we've seen that went sour for one lawyer. But I want to thank the panelists again. I would like to give them one last opportunity to share some closing thoughts or remarks, statements. I see maybe some exchange of information in the chat. I love that. Keep that going. Yeah, take it away.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity also to engage with people who are interested in legal tech. And Marie did mention, and we do have a legal tech community where we have, people interested in legal tech and innovation, where we share news stories, updates, job postings, internships, etc. Please do reach out to me, and I'll make sure to send you a link to join that community. I'll make sure to answer any of the questions you might have about, some of the resources that you could be following, some of the books you can be reading, podcasts you could be listening, blogs you can be reading, etc. I'll compile a list for you. So yeah, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us. I'm sure we'll all be very excited to help in what we can.
I second that. Please feel free. Legal Ops Uncensored is totally free. We have a website. We are going to be adding more resources. We're going to be building our own courses. We have a Slack channel, and we do events in, I think, like 30 cities. So hopefully we'll reach some of you. And then I'm available on LinkedIn. I really am happy to send you, if you connect with me, message me, tell me tell me what you're looking for in general. I'm happy to give you personalized recommendations. I'm happy to share my CV as a template. Anything you guys need, I'm here to help. So yeah, door is open.
This was great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much to our panelists. It really was a fantastic conversation. Look forward to bringing you back in the future for the next round of law students who are looking to put on panels like this. Thank you to the attendees who joined. Yeah, thank you all so much. Bye. Take care, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a good evening.